Hey, well, thanks for coming. I'm surprised. You already heard the deal, right? Okay, that's all I got. No, there is more, but here's what I want to do. I have this concern generically. I never want to be the guy answering questions that people aren't asking. You know people like that? Like, well, I appreciate what you're saying, but that's not my question. So since you just heard me unload the wagon, I thought we'd start with questions. And then I got more content. Content is not a problem. But I'd rather start where you are. So anything I said about quicksand or the choices kind of caught you off guard, didn't it? Like, he wants us to ask questions. Well, if you've got questions, like I said, if you don't, I can preach. But let's see, any questions? And I'm going to bring the mic again for our friends in TV land. So they can hear you.
Thank you, Mark. My question is, well, actually, you talked about asking more questions than making statements. So my question is, how do you go about becoming a better question asker, if there's such a thing?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think there is such a thing. I think it starts with the choice. And then you need to have some questions, which is why I encourage you to collect questions. So let me do this. Let me share a few of my favorite questions, and just as a thought jogger for you. And what I want to illustrate, these may never be questions you would use, but what I want to illustrate, I think you already know this intuitively and experientially, is that different questions work in different situations, which is why you don't need just one question. You need a million questions, so you'll be able to pull the one that you think you need. And there's some discernment, and there's some judgment, and there's some practice, and sometimes you get it wrong, and you say, you put that question back in the bag. You don't throw it away, right? So I'm going to give you a few of my favorites. Here's the question that I ask more than any other question. And on a good day, I ask it many times every day for me. Specifically, comma, what are we trying to accomplish? Or what am I trying to accomplish? Specifically, what am I trying to accomplish? I asked myself that before I stood in there. I'll ask myself here. I ask that when I'm going to send an email. I ask that when I send a text. I ask that when I have a one-on-one conversation. I'm trying to connect. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to coach. I'm trying to add value. Specifically. And in a team setting, people around here are tired of me because for 30, 40 years, we're in a meeting. If somebody starts on a topic, I give them about 30 seconds to tell the group, why are we talking about this? And I always raise my hand and I say, I have a process question. And now they know what it is. It's like, specifically, what are we trying to accomplish? Is this information sharing? Are we trying to make a decision? Are we trying to make a recommendation? It helps me to be focused because my brain will go everywhere. And a lot of people's brain will go everywhere. And in a room, I've actually done this, just a little quick sidebar. Somebody stood up in a meeting to speak. And I didn't ask the question because I thought this would be a teachable moment. I let them go for an hour. And then I said, I got a process question. And I went around the room and I said, would you tell us what you think we're trying to accomplish? Everybody in the room gave a different answer. Then I went to the person in the front of the room. I said, are any of those the correct response? And he said, nope. So I said, we just took an hour times all these people. It's like, something feels wrong about that to me. So that's my favorite go-to question. Helps me specifically, what are we trying to accomplish, or specifically, what am I trying to accomplish? But that's not always a great question. You want to follow up on that? Is that, okay, let me do one or two more. If we're in planning, particularly strategic planning, long-term planning, my favorite question is, what do we want to be true in a decade that's not true today? I love that question. I think it's a great question for individuals. I think it's a great question for your relationships. I think it's a great question for your finances. I think it's a great question for your career. It's a great question for your organization. It forces you to elongate your perspective. And you know the tension we have to live in as leaders, it's heads up, heads down, heads up, heads down. But the world's pulling us head down. And you can't lead well if you don't from time to time pull up and be sure you're still headed where you're trying to go. Let me give you one more. I could give you more. If I'm trying to communicate something, particularly it has any degree of complexity, my favorite question is, how would I explain this to a small child? And I will actually go find a small child. And I prefer 6 or 7-year-olds because they're old enough to process and comprehend. When you try it with a 2 or 3-year-old, it's kind of a crapshoot. So because if they don't understand it, then there's a good hunch that everybody else is not going to understand it. And if I can't say it simply and clearly, then there's a real good chance I don't understand it either. So just start building your a repository, a bag of questions. Begin with the choice. I want to fuel my curiosity through questions. And again, I said it in there. I lead better when I ask more questions. And the best leaders I know ask the most questions. And they ask the best questions. I'm like, yeah, I got to remember that one. I got to write that down. I want to use that someday. It's really, really good. Okay, ma'am, question? Oh, I got to give you this. Sorry.
You mentioned when you were speaking to the whole group that your dream for the future is not a return to the past. At our organization, and I can probably attest for most of the folks in the room, COVID really kind of turned the world upside down for many nonprofits. And so we were forced to pivot, which is the word that's now become a cliche. But now we're kind of getting out of it. And one of the challenges that we're having as an organization is just moving beyond the quicksand that we are all in organizationally. So what are your suggestions on helping a team identify that reality and then create that culture of moving beyond it, because it's an imperative?
Well, there's a simple question. Thank you. Wow, that's big. Okay, so I love Q&A and I hate Q&A because I'd love to spend a day helping you think about that. Please don't mistake the brevity of my response with the magnitude of that question. I think you've already begun that process in your head, because the leader has to say, we are going to confront reality. That rarely happens unless the leader has come to that position for herself, for himself. So if you're willing to confront reality, you need to help them confront reality. Again, it goes back to Max Dupree. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. Your people need to understand reality, and maybe they don't. Maybe they don't see the quicksand. Maybe they don't think there's a path forward. So you've got to help them. And again, I think the choices work individually and collectively that we just talked about. Build some margin, fuel curiosity, so forth and so on, and then choose to create change. Collectively, you can actually change more collectively than you can change individually. And I think vision is going to be part of that, which is why, none of you, I don't think, want your organization to be where it was pre-COVID in 10 years. That's what I meant. Your dream for the future can't be a return to the past. So this is hard work. The quicksand is powerful, right? And it's hard to get out. And then once you get out, there's hard work ahead. Nobody's going to have energy for that unless they can personally resonate with and connect with the vision. The vision is going to provide the fuel. Now, it won't do all the work, right? Fuel doesn't make a car go, but it won't go without it, right? So I think as the leader, you've got to say, what's it going to take for my team to understand, to embrace, to confront truth and reality? And again, you use your imagination and get them to help. If you can win some people over that go, yeah, we got to become more grounded. We've done all kind of crazy things around here. I say crazy things. We'll have a meeting. We'll bring in customers. Like to a corporate meeting? Yeah, because we're doing all this for them, so let's bring them in. Let's hear their reality. Just as a random example. There are any number of ways. Benchmarking other organizations that you can learn from and say, oh, so we don't have to do it the way we've done it because they don't do it that way, right? I mean, so create a long list of of reality-inducing events and experiences and encounters. But the fact that you're thinking that way is that first step. Because no team drifts to greatness. No organization drifts to greatness. They have to be led there. So I think you're on the right path. All right, another question, if there is one or two. I see that hand coming your way. Oh, we have a mic.
Thank you. Let me see if I know how to ask this. When we tend to talk about leadership, at least in my experience, we tend to talk more about doing than being, which I personally believe and have seen could lead to burnout. So in your experience, what has been your experience on leaders that have healthy rhythms that allows them to win both at work but also at home?
Okay, that, again, another great question. I think I would start with margin, because if you don't have margin is not just time. You've got to have the physical, mental, and emotional energy. There's a whole chapter in the book on your energy, because here's what happens. If you give it all at the office, you got nothing when you get home. And your brain actually allocates energy, and it gives it to physical tasks before it gives it to cognitive tasks, before it gives it to relational tasks. And the last thing your brain allocates energy to is empathy. And so if you're exhausted when you get home, you may physically be able to do it. You might even be able to fake it on the relationship, but you won't have any energy for empathy. And depending on how hard your day was, you may not have time for any of that or energy. I know a guy, he worked so hard. I love the guy. He'd go home and he'd go to sleep when he got home, like before dinner. And then after dinner, he'd watch TV because he says he need to unwind, then he'd go to bed. And I'm sitting there going, there's something fundamentally wrong. I mean, I love you, but this I'm just exhausted. So your body's going to give the energy. Your brain is going to give it to the physical task first, which is why I think we all need personal energy management plans. So I think it begins there, is that we got to steward more than just our time. We didn't have time to get into that in the other room. And I think you got to be vigilant. I don't think you ever solve any of this. I think you got to make these choices over and over and over and over again. You got to steward and manage your energy forever. I think that's been my experience, and I think the research would support that as well. So not an easy task, but again, I'll say to you, I think you're on the right path because you're asking the right question. Just like this lady, you're asking the right question. You understand the value of it, so you're pursuing it. So I'd say stay with it.
Good afternoon. Chris Woods with Opportunity Knox. So in the vein of scaling impact, you cannot scale impact without people. So how do you continuously convey the vision or impart the vision into new staff members and existing ones who might have kind of lost track of the vision? How do you do that as a leader?
Okay. You guys are asking big questions. See, I'm glad we asked had this time together. So I'll give you a few, because there are so many. And I would encourage you to, maybe in some of your margin time, to ask yourself that question and start writing down your answers. And you can stop when you get to 500. Maybe you should go to 1,000, because you're going to be doing it forever. You can't ever stop, right? So that's part of the deal. We've just finished some research, some global research on culture. And I think it applies to what you're saying here. It's great to have an aspiration, and you'll never have a great organization or a great culture without an aspiration. But you have to amplify the aspiration, because there's so much noise out there, and there's clutter, and there's busyness, and there's distraction, and maybe even a little quicksand. So we've been looking at how the best leaders in the world amplify the aspiration, which is my language, not yours. But how do you help people get the vision? So I'll give you two that are in your court, because again, you can make a long list. One is role modeling. Role modeling. People always watch the leader, whether we want them to or not. They're always watching. You got to walk the talk. even when it's hard. Now, you're not going to be perfect, and they don't expect you to be perfect, but they expect a good faith effort. And they're going to know your heart. And if you're trying to get people to do something that you're not doing, so I'll give you one quick fun example of that. Years ago, the officers, I'm an officer here, we were taking customer calls. And we had assigned time. And there was a place where you go and you take customer calls for an hour or two. And we were doing that to help us stay grounded in reality. We're talking to customers, many of whom had a complaint. It was good for us. And I remember one day, my time was coming up in just a few minutes, and I was really busy. And I thought I was doing something really important. And I thought, I wonder who I could send to sit in that room and take those calls on my behalf. You're going to say, don't do it, don't do it. I had a voice in my head that said, don't do it, don't do it. And so I put down what I was doing that was very important, and I went and took customer calls. I share that with you because that's one time I got it right. What do you think would have happened if people had said, yeah, he doesn't even go take those customer calls, so our first core value is customers first, and he's too busy? That's the first thing we found in our research. People always watch the leader. Second thing you can do is storytelling. Stories, man, that's one of my regrets that my time was cut a little short today, because what I cut were the stories. People love stories. Stories connect at an emotional level, at an intellectual level, at a personal level. And when you're telling stories about the dream, about the vision, about the aspiration, about the lives that you have actually changed, and how much better it's going to be in the future when you can change more lives, man, that's just powerful. So those are a couple things, but you can make a long, long list, including selection and structure, and there are all kind of things, symbols and traditions, and there's all kind of things you can do. But you are onto it. You have got to amplify the aspiration, because one, it won't feel credible, it won't feel believable, it won't feel personal, and it won't feel like you're in it if you're not doing those things. I'm sure it is, because you got to be doing that stuff, right? You got to keep doing it. And never give up. And one last thing on that, I don't know the size or scope of your organization, but you need to deputize everybody you can to help you walk the talk and tell the stories. I mean, you may be the chief role model, you might be the chief storyteller. You don't want to do it by yourself, particularly if you've got an organization of scope and scale. You need you're going to deputize everybody that buys the vision, right? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So I am a younger leader. On my team, I'm the youngest.
Younger than me, for sure.
And I lead my age and then also above my age. And I'm a very hands-on leader. I'll do whatever's needed. I'm working right next to them. So I definitely do not give myself the margin time, because I feel as though I need to lead by example and be there doing those tasks. So how do I get over that, really? And I don't want them to think I'm going off, and they're good people, but I don't want them to think I'm going off and just sitting in my office not doing my job. I try to show them I'm doing my job by being with them on the front end, if you will.
Okay. So, you ask a personal question, I'm going to have to give you a personal answer. You may not be communicating what you think you're communicating. What I heard you say is you want them to believe you're doing your job by doing their job. See, it's never our role as a leader to do our people's job, but it's not their role to do your job. And so what I encourage leaders is work diligently on role clarity. I'm talking like have real conversations. Write stuff on flip charts. Write stuff on the board. Here's the stuff I'm going to work on. Here's the stuff you're going to work on. Let me give you an example. A leader in most organizations provides resources. The people don't find and raise the resources. But in many organizations, they do. Even in a corporate structure, I would go into the budget process and lobby for the money that's going to come to our department. So that's something I can do. That's not something they can do. But I would tell them their job is to identify and solve problems. It's like, well, isn't that your job? No. Again, these are long lists. I'm giving you an abbreviation. I'm going to go get resources, and you're identifying and solving problems. Huh? Really? Okay, here's another one. It's like, who's supposed to provide accountability? Well, I'm going to help establish the vision and values. And then the team and the leaders on the team are supposed to enforce those core values and hold each other accountable. You don't want people going to the leader for accountability. You want people to be accountable to each other. So I'm suggesting you have a conversation about what's uniquely my role, what's uniquely your role. And I love the servant leadership, willing to serve. And there may be a time when, somebody calls in sick or somebody, they get way behind, there's a surge, and you're willing to step in. But every time you step in, you're actually in that moment not doing your job. And I don't even know what you do, but it's not what they do. And their job description and your job description look different. So at some point, then we can, I'm not projecting this on you, as leaders, we can run into capacity challenges and go, I can't get it all done. Well, maybe because a lot of that time you're doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. So that's margin by itself. If you give up the time when you're doing their work, that can be added back to your account. Reflect, assess, think, create, and plan. So I hope that helps a little bit. Again, I will role model, I'll jump in, I'll show them that I'm not scared of work, but that's not my job. Whatever it is. We've got Chick-fil-A operators that'll jump in and work fries. I said, that's good, but that's the most expensive labor hour of the year for a Chick-fil-A operator to be working on fries. You could get somebody at a different pay level, which, again, I'm not saying this is your situation, but in that case, that's a stewardship issue. Because you could do that in a much more cost-effective manner to get a team member to do those fries versus the leader of a $12 million business doing fries. Occasionally, but not with any regularity. So I hope that helps. Yes, I see that hand. We got a mic coming your way.
Hello, thank you so much. James O'Neill from Legal Outreach in New York City. So my question relates to scaling your impact. We are an organization that has had pretty incredible success over the years, which we're proud of. We've been asked by several or encouraged by several foundations as well as individuals to think about taking our program to another level, scaling.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks. Well, congratulations for that. But my question is, do you have a checklist of things that people should consider before they actually decide now it's time to take it to the next level?
No. Next question. No, I don't. That's good. That may be a resource that we can create. The book's only been out a couple months, so this is very helpful. Thank you. No, that's very helpful. But here's what I might say. What a powerful activity for your leaders to do together. Mm-hmm. Because maybe we could create a template, but what you need before you scale might be different than what you need, or you need, or you need, or you need. Just based on the nature of the work or the ministry or the nonprofit, there are probably some things, right? I mean, you're going to need adequate staffing, you're going to need adequate resources, but that feels almost too generic. So I don't have a list, but wow, something you could talk about in a team meeting is like, okay, if we wanted to, let's start with, what do we want to be true in a decade that's not true today? I told you I love that question. And you could brainstorm and you could talk about it and say, okay, let's just, for discussion's sake, let's pick, we're going to try to do this, which serve people in every continent in 10 years. I'm making this up. You're looking at me like, that's crazy. Okay, it is. But then you go to the question, what would it take? What would we need before we even began that journey? I think that's what you're asking. I don't have that answer, but it's a it'd be a really powerful question for your leaders to grapple with, and to understand that they're probably milestones, and it's a step function, I would think, not knowing you're not going to tomorrow open offices on all the continents, but you could say, well, what if we wanted to go to South America? Step one. What would we do? Because I do know a guy who's taken several organizations globally. I mean, taking them global, I should say. And he always started with a region. Let's do it a region at a time, and learn and grow and learn and grow. And he's taken several organizations to every country in the world, and he used that method. So good luck with that.
This is a deep question. I believe it is. So, Mark, either yourself or another leader, what if you feel like you got into a place where you've built, it's grown, it's success, but you're like, what's next as a leader? Have you ever gotten in that place like you're bored?
Well, you ask a couple of questions there. Well, they were all deep, but there wasn't one question there. I just want to be clear. He's really good at asking questions. You can tell he'll just string them together like that. So I believe. Let me think about this. I think forget the board part for just a minute. That might be different. I think every leader should always be asking what's next. We are the architects of the future. It has not been written. It's leaders that write the future. I think we should always be doing that. So, yeah, I try to stay in that place. I get worried when I'm not thinking about the future, because then I'm thinking, okay, what am I doing? Am I managing? Have I abdicated leadership altogether? So the first part of your question is, congratulations. I think that's what leaders do. Now, if you're unfulfilled, if you've lost the fire and the passion, then you probably got some inside work to do. It's like maybe this is a sign or a signal that you need to find a new challenge. Because leaders that aren't trying to accomplish something and leaders that aren't trying to go somewhere, you're not going to lead well, because that's the nature of leadership, right? And so, again, there may be some internal work. My buddy Randy Gravitt is in the room. He wrote a book that you might want to check out. It's called Unstuck. And somebody's read it. There's Randy. You can shake his hand as you leave. He's famous. So I don't know. Again, that's deep. It is, as you suggested. And it could be a season. You know, what is it that got you fired up in the beginning? And revisit that. And has that been accomplished? Then it might be time to go accomplish something else. Or maybe it's an extension or an expansion. Maybe you go from New York to 7 continents. I don't know. But I think those are different things. Thinking about the future is a good thing. Being bored is not. Is that a question in the back? Hey, let me get you the microphone. I just thought you were waving at me.
I talk pretty loud.
Go ahead. Well, it's for our TV friends.
Oh, okay. So, when I came to Georgia, it was in 1982 from New York City, and I had a round-trip ticket and $600, and I knew nobody. And, of course, I cried across this large airport. And so today, I'm the founder of an organization, and it's been 21 years. Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I've been asked to come to other states to establish this program. And I'm not really where I want to be here.
Okay.
So I've been stuck. I need to read Unstuck. That's the name. I've been stuck. But the difference is that in those other places, I know people. See, I didn't know anybody here. and I brought my children here. It was just us. So I'm wondering, because I have a story, and I was here from August 11th until September 3rd, and when I left here with $600, I had a job. I was working for MARTA. I had a beautiful townhome in an apartment complex with carpet. I came from the Bronx. I was on no carpet. I had no carpet. I was on the 5th floor.
Welcome south.
Yeah, right. And so I was in a very nice neighborhood at the time. So I'm just wondering if because of my stuck frame of mind right now, I'm just wondering if I just step out and go to one of those states, if that would be the catalyst for whatever is necessary here. So what do you think, boss?
You know, the questions are getting harder. It's a good thing we're about out of time, because I couldn't answer the next one. I'm not sure I can answer this one. I got 1 minute.
Well, actually, I was going to say, do we have time for just one more question?
Oh, well, this might take a minute. So let me do this. I think it would be really helpful, if you haven't already, to identify your hesitation. Because I sense that you're not sure. And it's a big decision. And I'm not saying that it's not. Can you name your concerns? Because your hesitation could be telling you something. And if your ultimate motivation is to improve what you've got here, you may not need to leave to improve what you've got here. Let's go back and confront reality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what are your hesitations, and what's your real goal and your real objective? I don't know that. I couldn't discern that from this brief encounter. But clarity on the goal, clarity on the hesitation, and then I would say, what are the alternatives? Because I'm not saying the hesitations aren't valid, and I'm not saying the goal's not valid, but one option is moving. I would want to say, what are the other options before I'd make that decision? So that's about all I can do right here. Thank you for asking. Okay, rather than a last question, because I saw a bunch of hands, you've got my cell number. It's in the book. Let me give it to you if you want to jot it down. 678 612 8441. Call me or text me if I can help you. And I forgot to mention it earlier. I have a free Smart Leadership Assessment. MarkMillerLeadership.com. And it actually would send you a prescription, if you will, based on how you score. Here's some things you may want to consider. And again, it costs you an email, because that's what you have to put in to get it. But it's free. Download it from MarkMillerLeadership.com. So I want to use my last 3 minutes to tell you a story. I'm a Bible reader, so I'm not assuming you are or you are not. But let me tell you about my favorite Bible character. I'm guessing he might be your favorite character as well. In fact, you might have named some of your children after this guy. Maybe. My favorite Bible character is Shamgar. Y'all know Shamgar? Come on. He's a judge in Israel, right between Deborah and Ehud. Yeah. And there's he's only mentioned twice in the scripture, but the verse that I go to is Judges chapter 3, verse 31. And it says that Shamgar, the son of Anath, slew 600 Philistines with an ox goad, and he also delivered Israel. Y'all want to hear that story again? Isn't that powerful? Think about this just a second. What did this man do? That's all we know about him. There's one historical reference in chapter 5. Why would he be my favorite Bible character? Because when I die, I want people to say, I was like Shamgar. He did 3 things. He used what he had. Can't use what you don't have. That's my encouragement to you. There are things you want and need that you don't have. Move on. He had an ox goad, people. And by the way, if you look at the whole scope and scale of Scripture, we don't think he had any supernatural powers, because when that is present, the Bible's pretty good at referencing. This man's out there swinging a big stick and killing these Philistines. But he used what he had. Number 2, he started where he was. You can't start where you're not. It's fine to have dreams and hopes and aspirations, but you're where you are. Use what you have, start where you are, and do what you can. I don't think any of us are ever going to be held accountable for what we could not do. My fear is that I won't be accountable for what I could have done. And here's the deal. The last part of that little story, you could miss it. He also delivered Israel. So here's what I think happens. When we use what we have, we start where we are, and we do what we can, it will be enough. It'll be enough. That's what I'm counting on. I'm just trying to be more like Shamgar. Thanks for what you do. I need to release you to wherever you're supposed to be next.